Upon arriving at the bustling marketplace, Lyra spotted Orion bargaining for spices. She watched, amused, as he animatedly gestured, trying to haggle down the price of saffron. Meanwhile, Lyra was meticulously examining handcrafted pottery at a nearby stall, her brow furrowed in concentration. As Orion finally closed his deal, he turned and caught Lyra's eye, offering a triumphant grin. Lyra, having made her selection, then joined them, holding up a beautifully glazed vase for their approval. Lyra slapped Orion in public just to impress another man. That very day, Orion deleted and blocked every way she could contact him. Everyone was shocked. After all, Lyra and Orion grew up together. Orion had liked her for over 10 years and even swore he'd marry her. Lyra confronted Orion angrily. Why? Just because I slapped you, can you stop being so petty? You're a man, aren't you? But Orion just sneered and asked back. The day before you slapped me, remember what you said to someone else? Should I help you recall it? Her face went pale instantly, and she was struck speechless. Chapter 1. Lyra and Orion were born in the same hospital. She just came into the world a few hours earlier. Our parents were neighbors in the same village. After our neighborhood was torn down, we were relocated to the same apartment building. She hit puberty earlier than Orion, and as kids, she'd always use her height advantage to boss Orion around, treating him like her sidekick. Orion was introverted, often sick, and by the time he was in 4th grade, he became a regular target for a bunch of boys in our class. They'd steal his textbooks, throw trash into his water cup, and sometimes even push him hard from behind. Orion went to the teacher crying for help, but he just said, "Why do they only bully you, not others? Maybe it's because you can't fit in. You're partly to blame too." That day, after school, when Orion told his parents what happened, Uncle Lou, Lyra's dad, happened to be visiting our house. He saw the tears on Orion's face, turned around, and brought Lyra over from his place. "Lyra, from now on, you'll walk to school with your little brother," Uncle Lou instructed her. The next morning, Lyra was waiting for Orion at the door with her backpack. At school, she grabbed Orion's hand and walked him into the classroom. She was taller than most boys in our class, and when she found the ringleader of the group bullying Orion, she dragged him into the alley behind the bathrooms. Orion stood behind her, watching as this one girl beat up an entire group of boys until they were crying and wailing. "I'm warning you, if you dare bully Orion again, you're going to regret it." Her voice wasn't loud, but it shook Orion to the core. That moment, the breeze lifted her long hair, and Orion saw her faint smile and those bright eyes. His heart started racing. Orion didn't understand love yet at that age, but he knew one thing. As long as he could see her, he felt happy. From that day on, rain or shine, Lyra always waited at Orion's door so they could go to school together. Even when she was sick and had to skip class, she'd still walk Orion to school first and pick him up before school let out. There was a 10-minute break during morning recess, and wherever Lyra went, Orion followed. She'd often pretend to be annoyed and wave her hand saying, "If you keep following me, I won't wait for you to go to school next time." But Orion never stopped. He happily stuck close to her, calling her Sister Lyra every step of the way. One day after school, she wasn't outside Orion's classroom like usual. Orion searched a few rooms she often visited, but still didn't find her. Even the security guard came and told Orion to leave, but Orion didn't see her anywhere. Orion walked toward the bus stop, dejected, when he finally saw her chewing bubblegum at a nearby snack shop. She walked toward Orion, still blowing bubbles, and complained, "Took you long enough." Then she pulled a piece of candy from her pocket and handed it to Orion. Time passed, and Lyra and Orion grew up together like that. Orion had a growth spurt that summer and finally caught up to her in height. Later, Orion grew taller than her by quite a bit. Orion began to notice her looking at him differently. When Orion helped her with math, she wasn't looking at the questions. She was smiling at Orion. When the bus was full and she had to stand, Orion could see her shyly tugging at the hem of Orion's uniform. After their high school entrance exams, both of them got into the city's top school. Her mom joked, "I've watched Orion grow up. He'd make a fine son-in-law. How about making it official once you both get into college?" Orion knew Aunt Lou was teasing, but Lyra blushed and ducked into Orion's room. The adults all saw her reaction, and so did Orion. Orion could hear his own heart pounding like a drum as he shouted, "I like Lyra. One day I'm going to marry her." Everyone laughed, and Orion figured she heard it from inside the room too. But that special feeling came to an end in their final year of high school. Chapter 2. On the first day of their final year in high school, while the entire class sat waiting for their new textbooks, a boy with a bright and sunny face stood at the doorway. The homeroom teacher led him to the podium and introduced him. "This is Lyra, a new transfer student. Senior year is a crucial time, so I hope you'll all help him fit in." The sunlight lit up his face. He smiled, glanced around the room, and then fixed his gaze on Orion. "I heard from a friend," he said, "that there's a simp in this class. To be more specific, someone who follows a girl around like a loyal sidekick." Whoa! Gasps and murmurs immediately filled the room. Orion looked him in the eyes and swallowed hard. Orion didn't even have to turn to know that every single person was staring at Orion. After entering this top-ranked high school, Orion rarely ran into anyone from his elementary or middle school, but rarely didn't mean never. And when they saw Orion was still trailing behind Lyra, just like before, they'd snicker behind Orion's back. At least no one had ever dared to say it to Orion's face, until now. "Sorry, Orion," Lyra said mockingly. "I also heard you're really prideful. Will saying this upset you?" He raised his eyebrows at Orion, his eyes full of provocation. "But seriously, you're a guy, always following a girl around. Isn't that a bit pathetic? She's not your mom, or are you part of a special group?" "Lyra, that's enough." Lyra slammed her hand on the desk and stood up. Her chair toppled over with a loud bang. Lyra finally turned his gaze away from Orion, but his expression suddenly softened. "Am I wrong, Lyra?" he said gently. "Honestly, you've been kind of annoyed by his clingy behavior for a while now, haven't you?" Lyra pressed her lips tightly together, like she was silently admitting he had a point. Bang, bang, bang. The teacher knocked on the blackboard 3 times. Lyra finally shut up. "There's one empty seat. Go sit there," he ordered, pointing at the seat next to Lyra. Then he added, "This year, I hope all of you focus on your studies and get into your dream colleges. Pointless, childish nonsense like that, don't bring it up again, all right? A few of you go to the office and pick up the textbooks." As the teacher spoke, he gave Orion a meaningful glance. Orion understood and followed the group out of the classroom. When Orion returned with the books, he saw something that made his stomach churn. The two people who had been at each other's throats just minutes ago were now standing very close together. Lyra looked up at Orion, his eyes gleaming with smug satisfaction. After school, Lyra packed her bag and left the classroom hand in hand with Lyra. Orion watched their backs fade into the distance, then pulled a small cake from his drawer and stuffed big bites into his mouth. It was her favorite flavor, not sweet at all. Everything that happened today played over and over in Orion's mind, making his chest ache. That day, Lyra became the third wheel between Orion and Lyra. Their relationship could never go back to how it used to be. Chapter 3. Lyra was a natural at socializing. Within just a few days of transferring, he had already blended in with the whole class. Orion didn't understand how he and Lyra had suddenly become so close. All Orion knew was that starting from that week, she no longer needed Orion to bring her breakfast. "Orion brought you steamed buns. Got both of your favorite flavors today," Orion said, placing them on her desk. Lyra kept her head down, busy organizing her drawer. "Thanks, but you can take them back. I've already eaten." Lyra lifted a half-eaten bowl of long and sticky rice porridge and held it up in front of Orion, wearing a smug smile. "Oh, Orion didn't know you brought breakfast too." But Lyra couldn't even finish this porridge. "You really don't need to keep bringing food." "What did you just say?" Orion looked at the bowl in his hand, and something clicked. "Isn't it better if you stop bringing breakfast? Focus on your studies. No need to fuss over trivial stuff like this," Lyra added, curling his lip and ducking behind Lyra. "Wait, you're not actually mad, are you?" Lyra put her book down and sat up straight. "Lyra's just trying to help. Don't be so petty." That line hit Orion like a punch to the chest. Orion's head filled with question marks, and he was left speechless. Orion looked up at the sky through the window as the familiar ache returned to his chest. Fine, Orion's the petty one. It's all Orion's fault." Orion's sudden outburst silenced the entire classroom. Lyra quietly sipped his porridge, mouthing the words, "She drank this. It's sweet, Orion." Alara's voice was sharp, clearly irritated by the sarcasm in Orion's tone. Orion couldn't take it anymore. Orion reached over and pulled the steamed buns off her desk. Why are you yelling? You think Orion will back down just because you raise your voice? Lyra was stunned. It was the first time Orion had ever spoken to her that way. She instinctively reached out to grab Orion's hand, but Orion pushed her away. Don't be mad. Orion will eat it, all right? Give Orion the buns. Keep bringing breakfast like before. Lyra held out her hands with a gentle tone, like she used to. Orion glanced past her. Lyra was glaring at Orion with pure jealousy. Orion had never seen that look in anyone else's eyes. He was the first. From that day on, Lyra started making things difficult for Orion. It was like being caught in a sudden storm, a tiny boat in the middle of raging winds and rain. Orion had nowhere to hide. Orion was strong in science, ranking near the top of the class. Orion's language arts grades were notoriously bad, often publicly called out by the teacher. Whenever Orion answered a question in class, Lyra would mutter under his breath, "You don't even know that. What an idiot." His little entourage would laugh along, the snickering echoing through the room. During group discussions, Orion would barely share his opinion before Lyra rolled his eyes. Orion doesn't agree with that. Then his circle would launch into mocking Orion, turning everything Orion said into a joke. At first, Lyra would still speak up for Orion. "Come on, don't be like that. We're all classmates." But Lyra always had a way to twist things. "Orion's just doing it for his own good," he'd say, and with that, Lyra would fall silent, as if she agreed with him. Watching them laugh and chat together felt like having needles pricked into Orion's chest. Half a semester passed. Orion's eyes were swollen and red from allergies, which soon became Lyra's next weapon. After school, Orion put on sunglasses and tried to slip out of class. Lyra immediately pointed at Orion's face and shouted, "Look, he spent the whole day lying on his desk. Bet his eyes are swollen from crying. That's why he's wearing shades." Then he yanked them off Orion's face. "Told you so." All eyes turned to Orion again. Another wave of laughter erupted. Tears welled up in Orion's eyes, but Orion fought hard to keep them from falling. "That's enough. You really think you're funny." Lyra shrugged like he couldn't care less. "Relax, it's just a joke. Don't be so sensitive." But Orion knew these so-called jokes weren't funny at all. Chapter 4. A surge of fury exploded inside Orion. Orion raised his fist and punched Lyra square in the face. He clearly wasn't expecting it. Orion's punch knocked him to the ground, leaving a red mark on his cheek. He looked utterly humiliated. "Are you looking to die?" Lyra grabbed onto a desk and stood up. Orion looked at the powder residue on his fingers and sneered. "No wonder your skin's so thick. You caked on so much foundation." Orion turned to head to the restroom to wash it off, but Lyra grabbed Orion's wrist. Her voice was cold and commanding. "Apologize." Why should Orion apologize to him? "You hit him." Her voice was utterly devoid of warmth. "He was just joking, and you hit him. Apologize. Don't make me hate you." Orion stared at the girl who was now defending Lyra, and a deep unfamiliarity welled up in Orion's chest. "Orion won't." Orion shouted. The moment the words left Orion's mouth, Lyra slapped Orion across the face. Everyone's eyes locked on them. The tension in the classroom was suffocating. Orion touched his burning cheek and laughed. So, childhood bonds really can't compete with sudden infatuation. Orion slung his backpack over his shoulder and walked out of the classroom. Behind Orion, he heard Lyra's worried voice. "Lyra, are you okay? Come on, let's get you to the nurse's office." Orion's face still stung, and there was a dull, heavy ache in his chest. When Orion rushed out of the school gates, it was pouring rain. Orion hadn't brought an umbrella, but Orion didn't care. Head down, Orion walked through the streets, ignoring the strange looks from passers-by. Soaked to the bone, Orion finally got home. On the coffee table in the living room was a framed photo of their two families together. They had taken it last summer at the amusement park. Orion walked into his room and opened his closet. Every piece of clothing Lyra had ever bought Orion was neatly hung. Orion grabbed a cardboard box and began tossing in everything related to her. On Orion's nightstand was the only photo of just the two of them. Orion ran his fingers over her smiling face in the picture, then tossed it into the box too. After sealing the box with tape, Orion carried it downstairs and stopped in front of the garbage bin. Thud! The box hit the bottom of the empty bin with a hollow sound. Lyra and Orion could never go back to how they were. A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Orion thought maybe his parents had forgotten their keys, but when Orion opened it, it was Lyra. Her expression was cold. Orion. Orion looked down. She was holding the same cardboard box Orion had just thrown away. She pulled out their photo. Why did you throw this away? And all these? They were gifts from me. Why did you throw them out? Orion smiled. What Orion does with his stuff? What's it got to do with you? She stared at Orion, her eyes settling on the red mark still faintly visible on Orion's face. I didn't even hit you that hard. Why is your face like this? Her voice suddenly broke, and she reached out a hand. Orion turned his head, dodging her touch. She was the only friend Orion had ever had. Whenever Orion felt wronged, she was the first person Orion would run to. I didn't mean to, she said anxiously. I didn't control my strength enough. That's enough. Orion cut her off. From now on, we're just neighbors in the same building. Lyra set down the box and grabbed Orion's hand. Why, Orion? Is it because I slapped you at school? Don't be such a child. You're a grown man. Can't you stop being so petty? Childish. Petty. Orion let out a cold laugh. Lyra, from this moment on, we're done. Her tears spilled over. I didn't mean it that way. I was wrong. I'm sorry, okay? Orion doesn't need your apology. One by one, Orion peeled her fingers off his hand. Don't come bothering Orion ever again. Her expression shifted from shock to confusion and finally to a bitter, mocking smile. Fine, fine. You said it yourself. Don't come crawling back later. With that, she turned and walked away without looking back. Only when her footsteps had faded completely down the stairs did Orion stand there, dazed, and quietly close the door. Chapter 5. The next day at school, Lyra and Lyra were officially a couple. They brought in big bags of candy and dozens of cups of bubble tea, placing one on every classmate's desk. Orion thought about telling her to focus on her studies instead, but then Orion remembered, what did any of this have to do with Orion anymore? Everyone in class agreed without a word to keep this open secret from the teachers and help cover for the new couple. It wasn't surprising. When Lyra first transferred, he quickly got in with a small crowd thanks to his upbeat, extroverted personality. He was sunny and good-looking, especially popular with the girls. Orion's a guy, but if anyone's believing you, feel free to come to Orion, he once said. What's wrong with hanging out with girls? Girls are clean, don't smell like sweat, and they're emotionally sharp. They notice the good in people. There are just some people Orion can't get along with, overly sensitive, bad temper, can't take a joke. He was clearly referring to the classmates he had made fun of, including Orion. Because of his jokes, a few students actually disliked him, but Lyra, she remained oblivious and even encouraged Orion to talk to him more. Orion refused. Lyra noticed and shrugged toward the nearby girls with exaggerated helplessness. Orion gets it. Orion gets it. Shouldn't have said they've got a bad temper. Now Orion's really pissed them off. Oh well, guess Orion will be iced out by another clique again. It's fine, Orion's used to it. And just like that, he twisted the whole situation. He was the one who bullied them, but now he made it seem like they were the ones alienating him. When Orion got home that day, Orion couldn't hold it in and complained to his parents about how ridiculous he was. Orion, we understand, Orion's dad said. Orion's met people like him before too. You don't have to worry about him. Just focus on yourself. And it's best not to get too close to that kind of person. Right at that moment, Lyra happened to be standing outside Orion's door. Her face darkened immediately after overhearing those words. She was the type who couldn't stand that kind of behavior. Uncle, Auntie, Orion, talking behind someone's back is not okay. The three of them laughed awkwardly. Later, Orion realized at some point she and Lyra had already built a close friendship. Lyra was decent at math and sat next to Lyra, so he took the initiative to tutor her. She was hopeless at the subject. Orion used to do that, but after one quiz right after he transferred, it all just shifted to him naturally. Lyra also knew about makeup and celebrity gossip, which helped him connect with the girls. A lot of them were Lyra's besties, and they quickly grew close to him as well. Lyra's impression of him changed too. He went from being the guy who randomly mocked people on his first day to a cheerful, helpful classmate. She used to dislike guys who clung too much, but somehow she warmed up to Lyra in no time. In class, she and Lyra passed secret notes and giggled out loud, paying no mind to anyone else. After school, she would hop on the back of his bicycle, laughing and joking with their little crowd of girls. Orion used to feel bitter and heartbroken whenever Orion saw them like that. But Orion always tried to convince himself they were just friends. Orion thought Lyra liked Orion. Turns out, Orion was just full of wishful thinking. "We're in a proper relationship," Lyra announced one day with Lyra sitting on his lap. Not like some people who hide behind that childhood friend label just to stick to her like glue. He then added, clearly aiming his words at Orion. "Also, Orion knows some folks out there don't like Orion and love running to the teachers to snitch, but Orion appreciated if certain classmates wouldn't report our relationship. Makes them look jealous." Orion stared at him, expressionless. Some classmates smiled and gave their blessings. Others poked at Orion for a reaction. Everyone in class knew Orion had grown up with Lyra. Everyone knew Orion liked her. Even at school, other girls had tried giving Orion love letters. Orion tossed every single one in the trash. There was only one girl by Orion's side, Lyra, and originally, Orion was the only boy by hers. Orion's deskmate glanced at Orion nervously. Orion didn't even lift his head, just focused on solving problems. The mood was tense. Lyra gave a snort and finally looked away from Orion. Chapter 6. After that, Lyra and Lyra became even closer. Lyra took off her hair tie and slipped it onto Lyra's wrist, playfully ordering him never to take it off. During class, they passed notes under the desk, and sometimes Lyra would laugh out loud like no one else existed. At lunch, Lyra always made sure to get an extra helping of her favorite dish. After school, Lyra would sit on the back of his bicycle, arms tightly wrapped around his waist. It had been 10 years between them, so at first, of course, Orion felt uncomfortable, but eventually, Orion got used to it. Just when Orion thought they'd never have anything to do with each other again, Lyra stopped Orion at the school gate one day after class. "Orion." Her voice was low and her expression complicated, somewhere between angry and happy. Orion couldn't tell. "Lyra called in sick today," she said, looking at Orion. Orion didn't immediately understand what that had to do with Orion. "So what?" Lyra got straight to the point. "Did you hit him again?" Orion froze for a second, then let out a cold laugh. "Orion hit him?" "Orion doesn't even want to breathe the same air as him. And you think Orion lay a finger on him?" Orion wasn't the kind to start fights, especially not with someone like Lyra. Orion couldn't even stand to look at him. As far as Orion was concerned, the fact that he left Orion alone was already a blessing. Why would Orion go out of his way to mess with him? But Lyra's eyes were full of suspicion. She questioned Orion. "Last night, he walked me home and said he'd pick me up this morning, but he never showed. I almost got marked late. I rushed to school, asked around, and found out from the teacher that he called in sick, said someone beat him up. Tell Orion the truth. Was it you? You're insane." Orion didn't want to argue anymore. Orion tried to push past her and leave, but she yanked Orion's wrist hard, staring at Orion like a predator watching prey. Orion knows you're upset that we're dating, but this is too much. Have you forgotten? You're the one who said we should act like strangers. Even if you're jealous, that's no excuse." She stopped mid-sentence, hesitated, then said softly, "If you just apologize, we can pretend none of this ever happened. We can go back to how things were." Her tone was urgent, like she couldn't wait for Orion's response. Orion had enough. "Are you serious? It's broad daylight, and you're dreaming already. Let go of Orion." "Apologize?" Orion told you Orion didn't do anything. You two want to date? Be Orion's guest. Have 10 kids right now for all Orion cares. Go get married and live happily ever after. Just leave Orion out of it. Lyra's face turned pale, stunned, but her hand didn't loosen. Just as Orion was about to shake free, a hand gently touched Lyra's arm. "Hey, is this how you treat your classmates?" Orion turned toward the voice. It was a girl in a dress, about their age. Anna. The name slipped out of Orion's mouth. Anna was one of their school's top graduates, a year ahead of them. Orion remembered her because she used to be the crush of countless guys. What was she doing here? Seeing the confusion on Orion's face, Anna glanced at Orion and winked mischievously. Then, without missing a beat, she slid her arm into Orion's. Lyra's expression soured immediately. Taking the chance, Orion broke free from Lyra's grip and ran off, pulling Anna with Orion, without looking back. Chapter 7. It was Wednesday during PE class. Orion wasn't feeling well, but Orion didn't think much of it. When the teacher blew the whistle, Orion lined up and ran laps with the rest of the boys. The boys and girls ran separately. The girls had already finished and were waiting nearby. Halfway through the run, Orion's vision suddenly went black. Orion's limbs turned weak and numb. Only then did Orion realize he was having a hypoglycemia attack. But it was too late. Orion's foot stumbled, and Orion collapsed awkwardly to his knees on the track. Gasps erupted all around Orion. Suddenly, Orion heard fast-approaching footsteps, and a slender hand wrapped around Orion's arm, helping Orion up. It was Lyra. Your blood sugar dropped again. Did you skip breakfast again? You're in no shape to run. Can you please take some responsibility for your body? Are you hurt? Orion will take you to the nurse. She kept nagging beside Orion's ear. Orion was already irritated from falling, and all the eyes staring at Orion only made Orion more annoyed. Orion yanked his arm back hard, trying to pull away. Don't touch Orion. Orion can walk on his own. She growled back. Is this really the time to throw a tantrum? Can you just care about your own health for once? Orion will just take you to the nurse's office, and then Orion's leaving. Is that okay with you? Orion let out a bitter laugh. You don't get it, do you? Is low blood sugar some kind of fatal illness? Sitting down somewhere for a few minutes will fix it. Is Orion dying? Do you have to take Orion to the nurse? Lyra clenched her jaw. After a moment, she hissed through her teeth. Why do you have to be so ungrateful? Orion looked at her calmly. If that's what you want to believe, then go ahead. Lyra flung Orion's arm away and stormed off without looking back. There weren't many people in the nurse's office, just one girl sitting on a cot. It was Anna again. Why was she still on campus? Didn't she already graduate and go off to college? She spotted Orion and lit up with a bright smile. Hey, Orion, what a coincidence. You're at the nurse's office too. Orion nodded weakly. Then Orion noticed Anna was actually injured, not like Orion's minor issue. Hers was serious. Her knee was wrapped in thick layers of gauze, with blood seeping through. The white bandage had turned completely red. She followed Orion's gaze, looked down at her leg, and scratched her head awkwardly. Oh, this? Ugh. There was this uneven spot on the court Orion didn't see. Took a fall while playing ball. Nothing major, just a scrape. What about you? Are you okay? Orion remembered hearing that Anna used to be captain of the school's girls' volleyball team. She was even pretty well known across the city. This must be why she came back, probably invited to help coach the new players. Looking at the bloody gauze made Orion's skin crawl, but Orion was surprised at how tough she was. She didn't seem fragile at all, quite the opposite. Orion's attitude toward Anna softened unconsciously. Orion's fine, just low blood sugar. You should rest. Anna nodded firmly, her smile radiant, completely unfazed by her injury. Because of her condition, she stayed in the nurse's office a long time, and over time, they got more familiar with each other. Anna was naturally friendly, warm, and easy to talk to. She was good at making people feel comfortable. One day, while sitting on the cot, she looked at Orion a little shyly. Orion thinks our friendship could maybe move a step forward. What do you think? Orion was stunned and waved his hands immediately. Orion's about to take the college entrance exams. Orion's not thinking about anything else right now. But Anna didn't give up. A week later, she could walk again. Every day during long break, she came to find Orion. Sometimes she brought candy. Sometimes she brought Orion's favorite milk. Whenever she showed up, she'd stick close to Orion's seat and chatter nonstop. The boys around Orion, they'd all jump up and give her their chairs with enthusiasm. Slowly, the rumor spread that the famous graduate Anna was dating a senior. Everyone thought they were together. Chapter 8. Orion denied it, but everyone knew. The guy who sat behind Orion leaned over, full of gossip. Hey, Orion, let Orion ask you, does Anna really have ABS? Orion blinked. How would Orion know that? Still, Orion answered honestly, Orion doesn't know. Come on, men, don't keep it from Orion at a time like this. Orion's just curious. You know how many guys chased her during her 3 years at school? She never said yes to any of them. Orion, spill it, come on. Even Orion's deskmate nudged Orion with his elbow. A senior girl who graduated with her said she's got ABS, and you're her only boyfriend. You must have seen them, right? Come on, tell Orion, were they hot? What did they feel like? Orion thought for a second. Did she have ABS? If Orion really dug into his memory, Orion thinks he actually had seen them. Orion fell into deep thought and mumbled, maybe, yeah. Even though she's thin, she's really athletic, eh? Yeah. Bro, how far did you two go already? The guy behind Orion shouted before Orion could finish. Hey, shut up. Orion quickly covered his mouth. Orion just saw it a few times, okay? Don't make it sound like Orion did anything. Just then, a sharp crash rang out across the classroom. They all turned. It was Lyra. She had dropped her cup and shattered it. Her face was pale, as if it took her a while to realize what had happened. Then she slowly crouched down to pick up the shards. As she gathered the broken pieces, Lyra suddenly said, Lyra, your hand. Orion looked over and saw that her finger had been cut. Bright red blood dripped down, trickling from her hand. She stared at her fingers, expression distant, lost in thought. Orion's got tissues, Lyra. Come here. Orion will help you wrap it. Lyra reached for her hand, but Lyra yanked it away, and then, in front of everyone, she walked straight toward Orion. The cut was deep, but she didn't seem to feel any pain. Blood left a dotted trail on the ground as she stopped in front of Orion. She looked at Orion and said softly, Orion got hurt. Orion, can Orion have a Band-Aid? Orion looked at her quietly. She knew Orion always carried Band-Aids because of her. When they were kids, Lyra was wild. She loved climbing trees, picking fruit, and catching crayfish in the river. She was always getting cuts or twisting her ankles. In middle school, a girl who had a crush on Orion got angry when Orion rejected her. She sent her older brother to block Orion in an alley after school. Lyra charged in, swinging a 2-meter stick, and beat them so badly no one ever dared to mess with Orion again. Another time, that same girl got a group of her friends to tail Lyra after school. They pushed her down the hallway. That part of school had full-length glass windows. Lyra wasn't expecting it. She crashed through the glass and rolled onto the ground, covered in shards. Thankfully, it was the first floor. She wasn't seriously hurt, but both her arms were covered in thin, bloody cuts. When Orion found her, her uniform was already soaked in red. She was in so much pain, her face twisted up, but she still gritted her teeth and told Orion she was fine, that it didn't hurt. Orion cried so hard Orion couldn't see clearly, but all Orion could do was stand there helpless, watching the blood keep soaking through her sleeves. From that day on, Orion always carried Band-Aids with him. Chapter 9. Ever since then, no matter who believed Orion always handled it himself. Orion never told Lyra again, afraid she might get hurt because of Orion. She's a girl too. How could Orion always rely on her to protect Orion? But that habit stuck with Orion even now. Lyra once teased Orion for overreacting, but when Orion saw the smile in her eyes, Orion knew she actually enjoyed it. That was until Lyra transferred in. One day he saw a Hello Kitty bandage fall out of Orion's bag. He told Lyra, "You're already a grown man, and you're using Hello Kitty bandages? What kind of guy likes stuff only girls are into?" Lyra just smiled and nodded. Orion snapped out of the memory and looked at Lyra, gently shaking his head. Orion's not a doctor. If you're hurt, go to the nurse's office. You hurt your hand, not your leg. Orion doesn't think you need Orion to carry you. Besides, isn't there someone else now? Lyra didn't look surprised. The color drained from her face. She gave a soft, self-mocking laugh. Got it. Her gaze dimmed instantly, losing its usual sparkle. After school, Lyra cornered Orion behind the classroom. Orion needs to talk. He wasn't smiling this time. His face was dead serious. Honestly, Orion was getting annoyed. Why do they keep coming to Orion? Orion minds his own business. Isn't that supposed to be a good thing? They're in a relationship. Orion's just living his life. They shouldn't even cross paths. So why is one confronting Orion today and another wants to talk tomorrow? Lyra stared at Orion intensely before finally saying, Orion really doesn't get it. You're just a nerd who only knows how to study. Why does she care about you so much? Orion almost laughed out loud. Cut the indirect talk. If you've got something to say, just say it. His face darkened for a second, his eyes filled with frustration. You must be pretty pleased with yourself, huh? Lyra might be with Orion now, but her heart is still with you. She saw you with another girl and went absolutely nuts. She hasn't talked to Orion for days. Orion really doesn't get it. What's so great about a clueless guy like you? She just got emotional and slapped you once, and you cut her off like that? You're mad just because she embarrassed you, right? So because your fragile pride got hurt, you're willing to throw away a lifelong friendship? You're honestly the perfect example of selfish and petty. Lyra let it all out like he was genuinely indignant for her. Orion listened quietly until he finished, then said, "You don't need to test Orion. Orion's not going to make up with her." He stiffened. Orion chuckled and added, "Being sent by your girlfriend to test another guy's feelings. That's got to be awkward." "Ah? But don't worry, Orion will treat her like a stranger from now on." Orion's Orion. Orion doesn't take back what Orion throws away. Tell Lyra the same thing Orion's always said. Stay the hell away from Orion. Lyra's expression parted guilt from being exposed, part humiliation and part confusion. As Orion walked away, Orion heard his voice behind Orion, full of reluctant, "Orion, just because of that one slap? Just for that?" "Yes, just for that," Orion answered again, giving the same reply. Chapter 10. That night Orion received a call from an unknown number. Without thinking much, Orion answered. "Orion, it was Lyra. She probably got a new SIM card. Are you done yet?" Orion was about to hang up as soon as Orion finished speaking. "Wait, please just listen to Orion." Lyra called out to stop Orion. Orion fell silent. Orion read that diary. After a moment her hoarse voice came through the phone. Orion's mind went blank for a second. She must be talking about the diary Orion wrote. Orion only had one diary, the one Lyra gave Orion when Orion turned 10. Orion treasured it like gold, and since then Orion got into the habit of journaling. Orion kept writing for many years. That diary held all the feelings Orion had for her over the years. Orion recorded every little moment Orion spent with Lyra, every second Orion liked her. Orion even fantasized that one day when they got married, Orion would give her that diary. It would be Orion's long confession. Lyra's voice was trembling. "Orion, sorry, Orion. Orion read your diary. Orion never knew you liked Orion that much. Orion, sorry for ignoring your feelings all this time. Honestly, Orion regretted slapping you the moment Orion did it. Orion, all these years Orion never just saw you as a little brother." Lyra, Orion interrupted her. "Orion knows you picked the diary up, but after all these days, you're just now reading it?" The other end of the line fell completely silent. Orion chuckled and said, "You never asked Orion about any of this before, did you? Because you never cared in the first place, right?" Her voice was weak and colorless. "But now that people are saying Orion's dating someone, you feel threatened? You suddenly feel your position is in danger? So today, months later, on some impulsive whim, you finally decided to stoop down and open that dusty old diary, didn't you?" Orion, that's not it. Orion didn't let her explain. Orion spoke calmly. "Lyra, you should know late apologies and confessions can't fix the past. What you're doing now just makes you look cheap. That diary means nothing now. You might as well throw it away. Don't call Orion again. Don't look for Orion either. You're really annoying." Orion hung up. Orion's birthday wasn't a week. Orion's parents planned a party and told Orion to invite classmates. At first, Orion didn't want to invite Lyra and the others, but since they'd been behaving lately, Orion figured Orion treat everyone the same and handed out the invitations. Anna shamelessly asked for one too. On the day of the birthday party, Orion dressed up. Lyra showed up too. Her makeup was flawless, and Lyra was holding her hand, dressed in a white suit. When he saw Orion, he quickly let go of her hand and wrapped his arm tightly around hers, sticking to her like glue. Lyra's face was expressionless. Orion didn't greet them. Orion walked straight toward the adults. The party was cheerful, but a little exhausting. At one point, Orion walked alone onto the terrace to catch some air in the night breeze. Then Orion heard footsteps behind Orion. Even if Orion didn't want to admit it, Orion recognized them instantly. They'd known each other for too long. She stood behind Orion. Her voice, "Can we talk, Orion?" Orion turned and saw Lyra's eyes red and puffy. "Of course," Orion said expressionlessly, "but if possible, Orion hopes it's the last time." Her face turned pale, and she gave a bitter laugh. "Does it really have to be like this between Orion and you, Orion? No matter what Orion says now, you won't forgive Orion, will you?" Orion looked away. Orion really doesn't understand. "Didn't you always like Orion? You know it." Orion likes you too. We were just one step away from confessing to each other. Why are you treating Orion like this? She finally said it out loud for the first time, admitting that she liked Orion too, but it came under circumstances like this. All because of that one slap? Just like the first time she asked that question, Orion nodded without hesitation. Yes, because of that one slap. Orion heard it that day. Chapter 11. Lyra didn't slap Orion just because she lost control of her emotions. The day before it happened, on the way home from school, Orion saw Lyra giving Lyra a ride. But halfway through they suddenly took a turn away from the road that led to Orion's neighborhood. Orion felt uneasy and followed them. Lyra and a few of her girlfriends took Lyra into a hot pot restaurant. While eating, they chatted away. He's been by your side since elementary school. Wow, that's basically what they call childhood sweethearts. So does he like you or not? Of course he does. In class, he only ever talks to Lyra, not any other girl. 9 years of chasing her. Lyra, you're still not saying yes? Orion doesn't like him. Orion's heart tensed up. Lyra laughed lightly and replied offhandedly. Orion means Orion does like him. But Orion's not really interested in dating. He's too dull, boring. A wave of commotion followed. Damn, that savage girl. Aren't you afraid he'll stop liking you if you keep stringing him along like this? No way. Guys like that, once they fall for someone, they cling on for dear life. You can't even shake them off. At that moment, Lyra's voice chimed in with a grin. Exactly. Orion totally gets that kind of guy. Once he likes something, he never stops, and he's always looking for someone to lean on. Orion bets no matter how Lyra treats him, as long as she shows him a tiny bit of kindness, he'll keep liking her forever. Look, even though Orion's this close with Lyra now, he's still watching Orion with puppy dog eyes, isn't he? Orion say even if she slapped him in public, then said sorry later, he'd still be fine with it. For real, that brainless? If he's that devoted, Lyra, want to give it a try? Slap him in front of everyone. That he'd still come crawling back? Orion held his breath. In the noisy restaurant, Lyra's voice rang out clearly. Sure, let's try it. Lyra was trembling, her hands slightly shaking. That's not it. Orion, listen to Orion. Orion just said that to save face. Orion didn't mean it. Orion doesn't deny it. That's pathetic, Lyra. Orion looked at her and said softly, didn't you always say it's awful to talk behind people's backs? Take a look at yourself. How are you any better? Lyra's face instantly drained of all color. Orion let out a long sigh. Strangely though, Orion had been furious and heartbroken at the time. Now Orion felt nothing. It was like watching someone else's story. Orion knows you like Orion, but Orion also knows you were swayed, right? There was a moment when you thought Lyra was great too. So great you wanted to impress him. That's normal. You like Orion because they grew up together, because Orion looked decent and loved you with everything Orion had. That's why you had feelings for Orion. But in the end, they're not a good match. You think Orion's good looking, but that doesn't stop you from thinking Orion's dull. You think Orion's passive, unassertive, not like Lyra who's confident and presentable. So eventually, you'd be drawn to someone like him. And even if it wasn't Lyra, it'd be someone else, the next sweet, charming guy who's nothing like Orion but just as attractive. But what you shouldn't have done is use Orion as your stepping stone. Orion gave a cold laugh. How dare you slap Orion? Who do you think you are, Lyra? Why would you slap Orion for someone you've only known a few months? Lyra's face went completely blank, drained of all hope, because deep down Orion had exposed her darkest, most selfish desire, and she knew it. She no longer had the strength to argue. Orion looked at her, unwavering. In the end, she just stood there in a daze, a single tear sliding down her cheek. Orion, do you not love Orion anymore? Orion never loved you. Orion said it without a second's hesitation. What? Lyra's lips lost all color as she stared at Orion, completely lost. Orion looked straight into her eyes and spoke honestly. Orion used to like you. Orion liked you for a long time because you always looked out for Orion when they were kids. That affection lived inside a beautiful fantasy Orion built around you. It didn't need your response. It could survive just by existing in Orion. But not long ago, Orion let it go. Why? She sounded like she was sleepwalking. Because even now, whenever Orion sees you, Orion's face still stings. Orion said it without emotion. Lyra's face finally lost all color. Chapter 12. Later, Lyra broke up with Lyra. Orion doesn't know the reason. Even though the college entrance exams were only a few months away, Lyra applied to transfer classes a few days after that. Lyra, on the other hand, seemed like a completely different person. She stopped hanging out with her old friends and started following Orion everywhere. She began bringing Orion breakfast. At lunch, she'd rush to the cafeteria to save Orion a spot and get Orion food. After school, she'd quietly follow behind Orion, saying she wanted to walk home together. It was like they were back in elementary school. No, she was treating Orion even better than she did back then. When Orion asked her what she was doing, she just shook her head and stared at Orion with those sorrowful eyes, silent. Eventually, she said she only wanted to make it up to Orion. She wanted to take care of Orion. Honestly, Orion couldn't shake her off. No one could talk sense into her. It was exhausting. Just around that time, Orion's parents' company planned an overseas assignment, ironically to Orion's mom's hometown. They decided that once the college entrance exams were over, their whole family would move. Orion didn't tell anyone in advance. One weekend, Orion just sent a few familiar classmates some goodbye messages. Lyra was the last to find out. Orion doesn't know how she did. She followed behind Orion a few times and asked, "After you move, you're not coming back, are you?" Orion ignored her. In the final days before the exams, they were all studying at home. On the day of the exam, someone from Lyra's testing room said that she filled her entire answer sheet with Orion's name. Because of that, she failed to get into college and had to consider retaking the exams next year. The day Orion received his acceptance letter, Orion's parents and Orion packed up and started the move. Lyra chased their car for a long, long time. Orion sat in the front passenger seat, silently watching the rearview mirror. Orion saw her running with everything she had, reaching out as if saying something. Orion saw her crying uncontrollably, her face pale as paper. "Orion, don't go. Please don't leave. Orion can't live without you. Orion." Lyra stood beside her, trying to hold her up, but she shoved him away. The wind was too strong. It blew away her last desperate cries. In the end, the figure who had been by Orion's side for 10 years, she fell, stood back up trembling, then got smaller, smaller, and smaller until all that was left was a blurry black dot, and then gone. Later on, Orion heard bits and pieces about Lyra from old classmates. Some said she was completely crushed while repeating the year, dull, lifeless every day. Some said she spiraled, became reckless, changed friends constantly. Others said she turned into someone entirely different, burying herself in study, focused, aiming for a specific university. Orion didn't pay any more attention. Anna and Orion went to the same university. Naturally, they ended up together. In the first couple of years, every birthday, Orion received a package. The sender never signed their name, but Orion recognized the return address instantly. Orion accepted every package, then had the courier send them back, collect on delivery, using the same shipping slip. It wasn't until Orion's junior year that Orion finally confessed his feelings to Anna. At her strong insistence, they made their relationship public on social media, and that yearly gift, which had arrived without fail, stopped coming. This is good enough. It should have ended a long time ago. This is the end and the beginning of Orion's new life.